from this presentation shortly after we finish today. So, Aaron, I'll jump into you and help us understand, why is it important for communities to market retail sites? Why is this something that economic developers and communities must do?
Yeah, well, one of the big things is, as a municipality or as an economic development corporation, you're competing with communities directly around you for retail and restaurants, but you're also competing for communities wide. One of the first questions we always get if we're out there marketing one of our clients to a retailer, the first question we get is, okay, I like the community, but what sites are available? So really being able to provide sites to that retailer quickly, same day is what we like to do, or at least within the week is really key there. So, if a retailer does come to you, a restaurant does come to you, they have interest. Maybe it's a Panda Express, they're looking for an acre pad site. Well, you want to be able to go back to Panda and say, hey, here's an acre pad site. Here's 5 acre pad sites that work in our community. So you've got to be ready to showcase those available sites. But one of the main things is you're competing really nationally for retailers and restaurants, and what's going to make your community stand out above the rest. Getting sites to those retailers as quick as possible, those developers as quick as possible, will help do that.
Awesome. So we've kind of broken down 3 reasons you must do that. And Aaron, you touched a little bit on each one of these, but the first one we have is that retailers need those available sites to come to your community. Like Aaron said, that's going to be the first question an interested retailer is going to ask is, hey, what sites do you have available? The second is that it increases the odds of a retailer seriously considering your community. Aaron, I don't know if you have any examples off the top of your head, but I know we've worked in communities where, because a specific site was available that a retailer was looking at, we were able to create some interest in a community where there probably wouldn't have been any interest before. And so I know that happens for us a lot. And Aaron, I don't know if you want to talk much about that, but I know you see that often.
Well, you have to look at it this way. Most of these retailers, most of these restaurants, they maybe have 2 or 3 site selectors for a state, or some of them for the entire U.S. So it's probably hard for them to get to your community, especially if you don't have a major airport near you. Maybe you're an hour or 2 from a major airport. It's probably hard for them to get to you quickly. So what you can do as an economic developer, what you can do as a city, is provide those sites to them ahead of time. And basically, you're doing the work of a site selector for them, maybe cutting down on a trip. Instead of them having to spend their time driving, flying to the community, you can go ahead and get them sites. So I think that's a big part of it.
Awesome. And then that third point is that it helps create opportunity and make the most out of your time with retailers and site selectors. So a lot of times you only get a few minutes with a retailer or site selector, and having site information available and ready to go is really going to make the most out of your time with those site selectors and retailers. We'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation, but first thing that comes to my mind is ICSC events, International Council of Shopping Center. So, for example, we're going to Recon in May. And so a lot of times you may get a minute, 2, maybe 5 minutes most with a retailer. So having those sites available really helps you take advantage of that time and make the most of your time and theirs.
And honestly, if you don't have them ready right then, be able to follow up with those retailers same day when you get back to your hotel. Shoot them an email with those sites. While it's top of the mind with these retailers, you want to make sure and get those sites in front of them.
Definitely. So, Aaron, having gone through that, let's talk about the key elements of marketing sites for retail growth. The first piece of that is community data. What kind of community data is going to be important for really setting an infrastructure to market those sites?
Sure. Well, like it says on the screen, I mean, first off, make sure it's accurate data. What's really important to retailers is really knowing your retail trade area size, your population, knowing your average household incomes, the typical demographics a retailer or restaurant would want to look at. But also, you want to, on that site profile, that site flyer you're putting together, you want to go ahead and map where the existing retailers are. So on the screen here, you'll see a map that we put together for one of our clients in College Station, Texas, actually. And what we've done is we mapped out where the retailer locations are. So instead of just providing a site to them and saying, hey, here's an acre pad site at the corner of Main and 3rd Street, as a retailer, as a site selector, we're going to want to know what retailers are around that site, what other developers, what other restaurants have projects going on there. So number one, make sure you've got accurate, up-to-date data. 2018 data is out. 2018 data is available. All of your marketing materials, all of your site profiles you're putting together, they should have 2018 demographics on them. So that's also important.
Awesome. And I think in terms of, we're talking about site specific stuff today, but the key place to start is really that bigger umbrella of understanding your community. What does our community look like? Who's in our community? So not only the demographics, but the psychographics, the buying behavior, and then that map of existing retail. After you have that, Aaron, how important is it to get the right retail data? And what kinds of retail data should communities be looking for when they're thinking about retail growth and trying to get retailers, developers, site selectors interested?
Yeah, one of the things I'll stress here, and we'll talk about it more later, is when you're putting together a site package for a retailer or developer, one of the big mistakes I see communities make or economic development organizations make, is they'll put together, a 25-page packet for one site. Well, if I'm a site selector for a retailer, for a restaurant, I want it to be as simple as possible. So on the screen here, you'll see three things that are very important. I talked about it already, but the retail trade area. Having a map of your retail trade area, where you're pulling consumers from on that site profile is key. You can see some of the some of the trade areas we've got on the screen here. One of the ways to do that is cell phone analysis information. If you've done a webinar with us before, you've heard us talk about that. But having that information on the site profile is key, as well as a retail gap analysis. You might have heard it referred to as a retail leakage analysis on that site profile. Make sure you include what are the leakage sectors. If you're looking again to recruit Panda Express to your community, make sure you call out that leakage sector. That for Panda it would be fast food restaurants, and make sure you call out that total leakage number there on that site profile again, so you have everything on one place, everything on that site flyer, so that the retailer's not having to dig through 25 pages of information. Maybe it's on 2 or 3 pages right there for them.
Definitely. And Aaron, you mentioned kind of the physical side of that, of when you're interacting with these retailer site selectors in person. Joel, I know y'all live in the web space and digital space. How important is it to have just compact, concise information that can be used on a website? Is that something that y'all try to build into a digital platform? How important is that for communities?
That's absolutely key. And for years, economic development, the approach on their websites was to really turn your website into a library of information. The more info you can have on there, the easier it is for you to just say, hey, go look at my website. It's on, the third drop down and 3 levels down. You'll find what you need. And that used to be the approach. But, nowadays, if you just think about your habits digitally, our attention spans have just shrunk dramatically. And we don't care about going 3 levels down in a drop down. We want it to be on the first drop down, and we want to find it right away. And so, you almost think of it as it's a good interview, right? They need the key information. They need to know that you're qualified. They need to know that you have what they're looking for up front. And then they'll, get into some of those in-depth things that you can hand them, a little bit later on. But you don't need it all on your site right there at their fingertips on 5 different levels of drop downs initially.
Awesome. So really leading with the meat of the data and making sure they get that core element, and then having some of the supporting information available if needed, right?
Sure. And you need to have it available. You need to have those studies. You need to have the more in-depth stuff at your fingertips, but it doesn't necessarily have to be all spread into your site.
Awesome. So moving from there, once you have community data and then you've got that specific retail data for your community, really important to have retail site profiles. And this is the core of what we're talking about today. Aaron, at the Retail Coach, we put something together called site profiles, and help us understand why that's important and kind of our methodology for that, and why communities really need to be focused on sites.
Yeah, well, as a municipality, if you have sites available, typically a retail broker or a real estate agent or somebody like that is going to have, flyers put together. But brokers typically go where the deals are the quickest and the easiest. So you can't expect these brokers to be marketing your site on an everyday basis, typically those sort of things. So what we do with our clients, what we recommend is creating your own site profiles. You can see one up on the screen here, which is for a community we put together for a couple of pad sites in front of a mall. And this is really a front and back flyer is what it is. And I'd stress to keep it simple in the beginning. But this is a front and back flyer. We lay out on this map here, the site plan, the 2 available pad sites. We've got information about what the rates for this project. The rates are negotiable, but if you know the rates on there, is it triple net, what the price is, those sort of things. A little bit of property information, and then we've also got 2 points of contact on there. We've got myself as a contact and also the mall manager for this community. So create retail site profiles, basically marketing flyers. Again, almost act as if you're the broker representing these sites. You're putting site flyers together. These can go on your website, on a database on your website. Here's the back of it, what it looked like there. Or here's another one that we put together. We've got what the available space is. You can kind of see the site layout plan there. You want to keep it concise. You want to have this information available. And really, again, brokers go where the deals are the quickest and the easiest. So you as an economic developer, as a municipality, you can get sites in front of retailers quickly this way, having your own site flyers together.
And I think
one of the things I've found is the brokers or the developers that have a site, they love to know that you're out there marketing their site because it's basically free marketing for them, and you're getting their information out there.
And Aaron, I think the important piece of why these ultimately matter to kind of add to everything that you've been saying is ultimately you're helping paint the picture for what you're trying to do from a retail perspective. And you're trying to build a vision for your community. And that is one of the most important things that we see when you go into retail recruitment and development. If you don't have a vision, bad things can happen. You either won't get the retailers that you're looking for, or you may get the wrong types of retail, or you may not get the best use out of your land. How important is it, Aaron, to come in with a vision for what you want to do, and even on the front end to do some things like land use analyses and really market that vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's incredibly important. Is that you have a vision, you kind of know what you're looking for, you know what the leakage sectors are, you know what your community wants to see, you know what you want it to look like. So I think that's very important. Just like on those previous slides, we had those site plans that had been drawn out to really show where sites could go and those sort of things. So Austin mentioned it, but really you've got to be able to clearly communicate what your vision is, whether it's new development, redevelopment, revitalization, and then you've got to be able to identify land assemblage properties. So say we're working with a restaurant and we know they're looking for an 1.5 acre pad site. Well, maybe you have 2.75 acre properties next to each other that the buildings could be raised and that could become a pad site. So look at it not only as vacant greenfield sites, but also look at it as possible redevelopment opportunities.
Joel, from the digital side, when we talk about marketing your vision and setting a vision for the community, a lot of times my mind goes to just kind of the brand of a community. And what do successful communities do in terms of branding? How do they present their vision, not only for retail, but for their community? And how do they manage that perception? What do you guys do with communities to help them do that?
Well, we love it when we get the opportunity to come in and help a community kind of solidify their brand. And, branding can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but, for context of what we're talking about here, the very starting point is your logo. Everything kind of stems from that. Everything grows from that. It needs to connect the elements on your site, the design of your flyers, things like that can all reflect your community. And that brand is the starting point. And you think about it, that logo goes with you on almost everything you do, whether you are representing yourself to a site selector or a retailer. You've got a name tag or a flyer in your hand, and all of those elements have your brand on it. And so if you don't have a solid brand, if it's difficult to read, if you can't even tell, where you're from, and it, maybe it has some elements on it that are real difficult to translate, into maybe different colors and things like that, Well, that's not a very versatile brand. It doesn't allow you the ability, it's not a very strong representation of who you are. It doesn't allow you the ability to kind of put it where it needs to be. And that's the starting of a great website, is a brand.
And when we talk about community brands and sites, one of the things that y'all do a lot of, Joel, is certainly websites. Tell me a little bit about how y'all manage available sites and properties on websites. What do you do to help communities in terms of making sure that site profiles are available and that retailers and site selectors can find that information?
That's a great question. You know, all of the data and all of the flyers are extremely important, but one of the things that makes them even more useful on a website is if they're searchable, right? If you can find that information quickly. And so it's important to have an available properties database on your site. Now that takes a number of forms. We provide one. We have one of our own that we developed, and it has, you know, probably around 100 fields that are geared towards all of the different aspects of a building or a site. And so you can take these flyers, similar to what we just looked at, the land use studies, all of those, they can be attached to a property within your tool and available so that someone can hop into this tool, do a quick search based on, you know, acreage or square footage that they're looking for, come up with a list of sites, and then they can dive in and get all that information right on one specific site within that tool, versus having to have a page where, well, we titled it this, and then we threw the download underneath it and tried to detail some specifics out, and they just have to kind of scroll down the page and hope that they find the right information. You know, sometimes these tools can get a little pricey, and, you know, based on what you need, you might pay for the convenience of one that has an autofill option that you don't have to manage on your own. And, you know, we'll connect those to our tools from time to time based on the needs of our clients. But really, the starting point is you just need to have one on there, regardless of what one you actually use.
Got it. And we're going to transition from there into talking about video, but to tie this all together from our end, the reason it's so important to market these sites is because ultimately retailers and site selectors have a process they go through when they look at who they're going to go and either visit or what communities they're going to go into. And so if you can present that vision and if you can give them as much information as possible on specific sites in your community, you're helping bring that timeline in. So you're helping reduce the amount of time it takes a retailer to go from being interested in your community to actually exploring your community. And one of the ways that we've seen people do that really effectively is video. Joel, I know y'all do a ton of video. Tell us a little bit about video and how communities are using that specifically from a site perspective to help bring that timeline in and really give site selectors more info.
You know, video is just becoming more and more important when it comes to content on the web. And you can see on the slide here a couple of statistics that really have stood out to me over the last year. In 2017, over 74% of all online web traffic was video. And you can just think back to your own habits on social media, on, you know, when you scroll through a news site, how many times you click on a video over sit and read an article, or at least you watch a video within an article as well. 200 to 300% increased click-through rates when a marketer sends a video in their email. That's huge to be able to throw a video into a marketing piece and gain that much more attention versus just, you know, having a text-based thing. 51.9% of marketing professionals, and that's worldwide across every platform, not just, you know, ED specific or city specific stuff. So across every platform, marketing professionals are saying that video content gives the best ROI. And so if you're looking for where's the best place to put your money, video is it. And it takes quality video. You can't just go out and find an iPhone or find a cheap camera and try and shoot your own video and hope that that's enough. You need to invest in good quality videography, and it's available everywhere you turn. We focus on economic development, but you can get that video, and you should, because just think about it. If you can shape the vision of a retailer or of a site selector before they ever even enter your community with a video of that available site or with a video of that available building, and you can kind of get ahead of any negative impact or negative impressions they might have of that property before it ever even comes up, so that then when as soon as they actually land on the ground to take a look at it, they've already kind of got your vision in mind, the one that you painted in a 20 or 30-second or a minute-long video.
Got it. And one of the things we talk about a lot, Joel, is perception, and you touched on it briefly, but just really being able to put forward the perception and the vision for your community in video form is so powerful, because you can really control the narrative about what your community is all about, what you're looking for, and it gives you such an opportunity to really take advantage of that. Aaron, how are you seeing communities use video, either site specifically or just in their community in general?
Yeah, well, I mean, think of it this way. If you're talking to a broker, you're talking to a developer, maybe a retailer that's really from out of state. Maybe you're trying to get In-N-Out Burger to your community, and maybe you're working with the representative from In-N-Out Burger that's in California. Well, being able to show them video kind of gives them a firsthand view of it, being able to visualize it, see it. So that's really the way I'm seeing it used. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the drone videos right now that are being used to really showcase, what the site looks like from an aerial view. It's one thing to look at it on Google Maps, but then to be able to see it from, all different directions, I think brings a lot to helping sell a site to a potential retailer, restaurant, or developer.
Right. So once community has all that, let's say we've got site profiles together, we've done our due diligence, we've got the data on the retail in our community. How do we take that and actively go and use that information? So, Aaron, how do you help communities, and what do you encourage communities to do with that information once you've gotten it all ready for your sites?
Well, you definitely want to target retailers, restaurants, developers that fit your community, the ones that are looking for deals in your community. So what you'll want to do is you want to, like I said, target those retailers that fit the community, really know what their site criteria is. So if you're looking to recruit Panda Express, they're looking for an acre, then you want to get acre pad sites in front of them. But if you're working with Chili's or somebody like that, and, say Chili's looks for an acre and a half to 2 acres, you want to be able to get Chili's that information. So what you can do is you can proactively reach out to these retailers, proactively reach out to these restaurants or developers, and even before they ask for sites, maybe go ahead and get them sites. Say, hey, here's 3 or 4 sites I thought you might be interested in our community. I think we fit your criteria, and you can approach it that way. And that's just one of the ways that we've seen, being able to use sites to market your community are key, but really target those retailers. We've got Costco on the screen. If you're looking to recruit Costco, go after Costco with a 10 or 15 acre site. They typically need in the 10 to 15 acre range there. So each retailer looks for different things. Like I said, Lowe's looks for a little bit different things in a site than what Home Depot does. But you can now proactively, if you've got these sites available, you can proactively go out and get them in front of them.
And Joel, from a digital perspective, I think it's important to note that you can target specific organizations, retailers, and even manufacturers and big companies with the digital side as well, right? I know y'all do some custom maps and things like that. How do you encourage communities to use their branding, their website, their digital platform to target retailers and developers?
I mean, I think that's key as well. You're only going to get so many opportunities to actually stand in front of a retailer and actually hand that information. Now, if you work with someone like Retail Coach that's kind of an ambassador for you, and they get those opportunities a little more than maybe you will as just a site selector, but they can always access your website. They can always get online and they can always find you there, but they have to be able to find you. And so when they land there, are they getting a good impression of your community as a whole? Do they see a brand that's strong, one that represents your community? Does it all fit together in a story of your community that's worth being a part of? And do you market that? Because if you just launch a website and then hope that it's going to just somehow magically attract attention, well, that's just never going to happen. I mean, you're going up against, like Aaron said earlier, a nation full of competitors looking to gain business from these retailers, from these stores. And so you need to do the work on search engine optimization. You need to do the work on strategic marketing, and that actually is work. It's not something that you can just kind of run through and hope it all works out on the other end. You need a good company that can help you understand your market, and that you can help them understand what you're targeting, and together you can work through a plan that helps you get your site in front of the right people at the right times.
That's important to note. One of the ways that we do that is through retail events. So I mentioned ICSC earlier, the International Council of Shopping Centers, and they have regional conferences throughout the year. They have a national conference in Las Vegas that's coming up in May called Recon. But that's how we interact with a lot of these retailers. Is we go to these regional events, we target them. One of the questions that we've gotten a lot of on the webinar today, Aaron, is how do you find out what site requirements retailers have? How do you find out what they're looking for? You mentioned Costco. What are some ways that people can find that site criteria?
Yeah, so one of the ways is if you're not already a member of the International Council of Shopping Centers, you need to become a member of ICSC. As a public entity, if you're a municipality or an economic development organization, you can actually become a member for $100. So even just becoming a member, that gives you access to the database of contacts at ICSC. So there's contacts as far as, who the site selectors are for these communities. They also put out information as far as what they're looking for in a community, what type of sites they're looking for, what regions they're expanding into, et cetera. So, I would become a member of ICSC. If you have questions on what retailers are moving, you can always just reach out to us. If you need the site criteria for a retailer, you can always just, feel free to reach out to us and we can help you. But those are probably the best ways to do that.
So we're go ahead.
I'll kind of go back, Austin, to that last slide if you can. One of the things I want to mention about ICSC is also I want to talk about the importance of it. International Council of Shopping Centers, we've been going as a company for the last 18 years. I mean, we've got team members that have been going for 25 plus years, but can't stress to you the importance of attending these ICSC conferences. You've got the Las Vegas conference that Austin mentioned that's nationally, and then you've also got the regional conferences as well. So, there's an ICSC Chicago event that takes place every October at the Navy Pier. You've got the ICSC conference that happens, previously it had been in Dallas, that happened for, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico. That one just recently was moved to Fort Worth, and it was moved to January, and they renamed it. It's now called ICSC Red River States. If you hadn't heard that. Then you've got the San Diego conference. You've got these regional conferences as well. So I recommend you attend these regional conferences, but what I would stress about going here is to these events is to make sure you have sites available, whether it's a binder that you've got the sites there, or maybe it's even an iPad. Have these sites available on your iPad so that you can just email, shoot over these sites as quickly as possible to these retailers after you have a meeting with them. So really utilize your time at ICSC, target retailers that fit your community, but then also be able to follow up immediately with sites. What I like to do is when I get back to my hotel room that night of ICSC is I'll send them the sites right then. Again, just while you're top of the mind with these retailers, these developers, these brokers, you want to get the information to them as quick as possible.
So, guys, with that, I'm gonna jump into Q&A because we've got a pretty good list of questions. For everyone attending, feel free to use that questions box as we go through this. Add questions. We want to answer as many questions as possible, as specifically as possible. So add those questions in there. Joel, I'll get started with you. We had a question about property searches on websites. Do you have a recommended company or tool for property searches on websites, or does ED Suite's tool work within other websites? What do you encourage communities to do with that functionality on their website?
That's a great question, especially in the wake of the Xceligent kind of downfall and kind of left a big hole in economic development. They were a pretty reputable company, at least as far as servicing their clients within economic development. So that left a lot of people kind of asking that question. We do have a tool, and it does work. It works best within our site, but we can, create either a microsite or embed on another site to be able to manage that. Our tool is a manually driven tool, so we can integrate it with an automatic feed, but it's primarily geared towards you being able to manage that information. So it takes a commitment. You have to make sure that you're ready to keep that information up to date and not let it slack. Because like Aaron mentioned earlier, it has to be accurate info for it to be worth anything on there. So, that's our tool is a great option, and we're moving forward with some exciting things to improve that offering in the near future. But there's some other great tools out there, and we work with all of them. GIS Planning has a great tool that embeds on your site and has a wealth of demographic information based on specific areas that you're searching. And there's a number of others that are out there. I mean, everybody's aware of LoopNet and CoStar and some of those bigger options, but there's a number of smaller options that are kind of offer that auto feed as well.
Great. Aaron, a question for you. Are there any other strategies that you use to market smaller communities sites that wouldn't necessarily fit the criteria for a larger company like Costco?
I think you approach it the same way as you would a Costco. You just look for retailers and restaurants that would fit that site. So, maybe you've got a 7-acre site, that you're not a large enough community for Costco or Walmart or something like that. Then what I would do is I would target a retailer such as Shopco that will go into communities that are a little bit smaller there. So I think what you just have to do is what we talked about is just match up retailers with the sites you have, and really vice versa at the same time. So that's kind of how I would approach that, is just, again, target the retailers that fit your community and then match up those sites with the retailers.
I think another point on that, Aaron, too, is the importance of marketing your community as a retail trade area and not just as a community size. We've certainly seen larger retailers go into communities of 100,000 that wouldn't necessarily have looked there, but because they're a regional center and they have a large regional trade area, they've been able to get some traction. So I think that's really important, understanding your retail trade area and even what your regional draw is, to be able to have those conversations to see if you truly could support one of those larger retailers.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Joel, a question for you. We're a relatively large community, but we don't have a huge budget for branding and website and marketing. If we were to start somewhere, where would we start? Where would you recommend we start with kind of branding our community?
That's a great question, because a lot of times you dive into that and you think, well, I have to have everything. I have to get it all done in order for it to look good. I have to, start from A and end with Z and get all the pieces in between. But really, the best place to begin is with your logo. And that involves a little bit more than just designing a logo. There needs to be a quality discovery process, conversation with you and the company or designers that are working together to create that brand, because that logo will represent the rest of what you do with your brand. And so you'll develop colors, you'll develop fonts that you use across the board. And so when you get into that and you can kind of establish a foundation to expand your messaging and your brand on top of that, it gives you a great starting point. And what I'd encourage communities to do, whether they're large or small, is you should be marketing for at least a little bit of money to go towards strengthening your brand every year. There's always something that can be done, whether that's investing in a video, whether that's investing in a refresh of your brand if it's been around for a while, or whether that's investing in new marketing pieces for sites or for just your general economic development that supports your brand. There's always something that needs to be done. And so to think that once you've kind of reached that point and you can just say, well, I can sit back and coast, pretty soon you're going to find yourself, kind of a little bit behind. And so I would just say, work with your board, encourage them with the importance of, this is the face of our work. Our brand is out there on everything that we do, and it needs to be quality, and it needs to represent our community. And if you kind of help them understand the importance, help them understand how much it's out there in front of people, and then you can kind of steer that conversation into, all right, we need to invest in this. We need to set aside some dollars. We need to, set aside more dollars. And you can kind of help them understand the cost involved, because there is a difference in quality work and, just having your best friend over here who's home from college take care of it or something like that, or a grandson or something like that that's just got some skills. And you may come out with something great. I mean, it happens, but you need a quality company to be able to help you work through those things and help it all connect in the right way.
Great. And Aaron, the flip side of that is, we get a lot of people that ask the question, hey, we've never done retail recruitment before. And not only have we never done retail recruitment, but we don't even know what sites are available. Where would you encourage a community that's looking for retail recruitment to start? How do they wrap their minds around how to get started and how to ultimately grow their retail base?
Well, probably the first thing I would do is just tell you to jump in your car and drive around your community and just look for sites that stand out. They're near other retail areas. It's a good site. Access into the site is good. That's probably the first thing I would do is jump into your car and just go look for sites. Do a land use analysis. Obviously, it's something we can help you with, but you can do that on your own as well. So go look for available sites. Do that. Also, just start putting the information together. Austin hit on it earlier, but you've got to know the size of your retail trade area. So really start working to put together, the data a retailer would want to see, whether it's retail trade area, demographics, maybe it's a leakage analysis. Have those completed, because that's ideally, or really what's going to happen is when you get into this process, that's the sort of things retailers and developers are going to want to see. So that would kind of be the process I would tell communities to take.
Great. In terms of video, Joel, what kinds of videos are you seeing communities use? One of the questions we got was, hey, we know we need to use video, but we're struggling with how to practically do that. How would you encourage communities to use video, or what are you seeing with clients that are being successful right now?
And there's so many ways to use video. That's what makes it so great, is that it's so versatile. You can take a number of different approaches to it. Each one can be different. You can do the exact same approach with just a little twist on it, and you come out with a completely different video the next time. And so that's what I love about video, is it's really up to the creativity and the growth of the community as things change, kind of updating those videos to match what's going on in your community. But I think one of the things that is becoming really important is, like we talked about, your video and your sites and your retail areas, and putting it together with maybe some 3D graphics on the screen, not just, take a quick drone tour of the thing, but if someone is viewing that without you sitting over their shoulder telling them what things are, they need to know, well, okay, that's a main highway over there, and that's an interstate, and that's a mile between this spot that you're showing me on this quick video and, where that intersection is. Throw some traffic counts with some graphics in there, things like that. And so those are becoming real effective if it's focused on a site or whether it's focused on a full-size community, and giving all of those kind of data and demographics and quick shots on the screen with that video, then that's real effective for someone to quickly sit there and watch. But that's not the end of it. One of the things that is kind of unique about economic development is, all your data and everything that you've got, it's possible that the site selector may already have some of that. They might already have an idea of what your community looks like from a demographic standpoint. They need some of those deeper demographics from you. But what they don't know is the story of your community. What makes your community interesting? What makes your community worth living in? If they're going to bring a retail spot in there, is there going to be a community around it that comes out and gives it business? And what kind of activity, what kind of life, what kind of quality of life goes on in your area that's going to generate extra business? And so creating a video that's kind of centered around just telling the story of your community can really give a perspective and can cast that vision for what you are now and where you're going and where you've been and how much you've grown.
All right. Well, guys, we're running up against our time limit here, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. But Aaron, Joel, thanks so much for joining us. Everybody that attended,
Yeah.
we'll follow up with slides. So we'll make sure to
Yeah.
get the slides and a recording to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Aaron, Joel,
Yeah.
thanks.
Hey, Austin, real
Yeah,
quick. Just want to add one last thing. We talked about our international council and shopping centers. Within the next month or so, we're going to be doing a webinar on ICSC, talking about ICSC Recon, and just being prepared for that, because you really have to start preparing a couple of months ahead of time. So just wanted to make sure we mentioned that, Austin. Just kind of keep an eye on your email on our website. We'll be announcing that webinar date soon.
definitely. And Joel, I know that you and Aaron will both be at the ICS. Is it the ICSC or the TDC Texas Winter Conference coming up?
TDC
Yeah,
winner.
Texas.
Yes, that's this week.
And that's in San Antonio this week.
It is. Yes, I'll be there all day Thursday. I think Aaron, you're there on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, so if you get a chance, come by and see us, talk to us, or shoot us an email. Our contact info is on the screen. But again, just want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we'll get like we said, we'll get the recording of this webinar out as well as a copy of the slides. And if you need anything, reach out to us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. And thanks so much for everyone that attended. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Austin.
Bye-bye.